If you're listening to this and you're feeling overwhelmed by clutter or stuck or ashamed of how long it's been building, this conversation is to you, for you. Today, we're talking about clutter, but not just physical clutter. We're talking about postponed decisions, paper, digital, mental, and emotional, and sometimes just stuff. What happens when decisions get delayed enough that they start shaping our lives? My guest today, Barbara Hemphill. Barbara is the author of Taming the Paper Tiger and the founder of Productive Environment Institute. She is best known for a simple but confronting idea. Clutter is postponed decisions. And when you really sit with that, you realize this isn't about paper or stuff. It's about the decisions that we avoid.
Hey, what's up? I'm Tony Taylor. Are you here for Leaders Lead the podcast? Let's go. Hey, how did you beat me? Look, let me tell you about this podcast. We got like 5 seconds. Leaders Lead the podcast is about leadership. Not just the leader without, but the leader within. All of these leaders that I'm talking to across the country, well, across the world now, they have one thing in common, and that's that they have overcome some insurmountable obstacles to get to where they're at today. Come on, let's go.
Hey, welcome to Leaders Lead, Barbara.
Oh, Tony, thanks for having me. I love that video. That is so good.
Thank you. It's almost like we're teleporting someplace, right?
Exactly right. People can relate. There's lots of people can relate to that frenetic life that we live these days.
The reason why I'm really excited to have you come to the show, my own personal reasons. There's always a personal agenda behind there. I'm not going to lie. When I bring people on the show, it's often something where I'm like, oh man, I remember in my life when I went through this, or actually going through this right now. But I'm thinking about, I had this moment when I was going through my divorce, and all of a sudden I just got up one day and I started just throwing things away. Throwing things away. I'm in the back of this freaking U-Haul. I threw away a couch. I threw away TV. I threw away all this stuff. And I felt so doggone good about getting rid of that stuff. Can you tell me what that was about? I never understood it. Never.
Well, it's interesting you use that as an example, because one of the things that my company that I created does is we do something called a productivity party in a company. And so we have a group of people within a company, and we turn it into an event with prizes and food. And we have a seminar called Sometimes It Takes an Expert to Take Out the Trash. And first employees are like, oh, I have real work to do and I don't want to throw away anything. And about 2 hours into it, it's like, oh, this feels so much lighter. I have heard that hundreds of times. So there's lots of layers, Tony, to that. There isn't one simple answer, but it all does boil down to emotion.
So it's almost like, so what I'm hearing you say is maybe there's a release of emotion, or like.
Yeah. So what I learned early on, I started with, a $7 ad in a New York City newspaper and started cleaning closets. And I quickly learned that closets were full because we were postponing the decision of, am I going to lose the 10 pounds to get back into this favorite pair of pants again? Or the exercise equipment that looks so good on Home Shopping Network, or the present I got from my Aunt Sally and I love her, but it's not really my style. And then you move over to paper, and the paper was on this side of the desk, goes to this side. And now in this day and age, it's like email. A large percentage of people wake up in the morning before they even get out of bed, grab their phone, go to email, and open, close. Before you know it, 40 minutes have gone by and nothing has changed because you haven't decided anything.
I feel so judged right now. That's me. That is so me. I'll do that. I'll wake up. I'll look at my email. I look at my social media and just, yeah. And a lot of the stuff, it's weird. Maybe probably about once a year, once every 2 years, I'll clean out my email. But for some reason, I'm holding on to that. So this episode is going to help me a lot.
Well, it is. In our experience, we have a program called SOAR, Systemize and Organize into Action and Reference. And the concept email is one of the biggest productivity drains we have because it's constantly in the background. Part of the thing about clutter is it hangs over us. We don't realize it. So that's why when the employees say, "Oh, I feel lighter," they didn't realize. And in the beginning, you've taught in your podcast, you talk about overcoming obstacles. One of my biggest has been to get the check writers to invest in me. Because the executive level has no idea the stress and overwhelm and lack of productivity that employees are experiencing. And so one of the things I started doing early on when I would reach out to a company, if the management wouldn't participate, I wouldn't take the job.
I don't blame you.
And I learned that when I did houses, because I would walk in and a mother or a father would say, "Let's start with the kids' room." I'd say, "No, you have no right to tell your kids to organize their room if you're not organizing yours." And I wouldn't do it.
Ooh, I love that. Would you get pushback?
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I said, you paid me to tell you the truth, and that's the truth. I mean, if you're not doing it, if you're not being, and as leaders, right? I mean, as leaders, most of all, we have to be role models.
Right. Oh yeah, we got to lead. We got to lead from within, and that's a lot about what this show is about. It's not the leader without, the person that needs to be led. It's about the person inside, us leading ourselves first. And I'm curious, when people come to you overwhelmed by clutter, what's usually happening in their life?
Well, it's different because there are lots of different causes. So there's different types of clutter. So for example, there can be circumstantial clutter. People who are generally organized people, but something happened, illness, divorce. You mentioned that. That's really a big one. Well, I've been through that. I know what that's like. Transition of some kind. So that's one. The second one is there are people who are naturally organized, but they just never organize their stuff. There's no system. We use the acronym system, saving you space, time, energy, and money. I love it because every time you have to do something repeatedly, I mean, we're recording this at the time people are talking about taxes. Well, if you have to get your information together for taxes, you need to have a system. And if you don't have, now is the time to create one, because while you're going through the chaos is when you figure out what you should have done so you wouldn't have the chaos now. And one of the things that we teach, and I learned this originally with paper when I wrote Taming the Paper Tiger, is today's mail is tomorrow's pile. So when I would go, my first client was a widow of a solo practitioner attorney who died suddenly, leaving piles of paper everywhere, and nobody knew what to do with it. Well, when in this case, he was dead, so we had to deal with it. But if I'm going into that situation, which I have hundreds of times with somebody living, it's like, we're going to ignore what you did in the past. We got to figure out why you have the problem in the first place so we can stop it. Once we've stopped it, then we go back. Because if you just clean up the old email's a good example, Tony. So if you say, okay, today I was going to clean it up. So you clean it up. But if you don't analyze why it was a mess in the first place, it's just going to build up again. You need a system for dealing with email.
Wow, that makes so much sense. I used to watch the show Hoarders. Have you ever seen Hoarders?
Oh, of course. I worked with some hoarders in the beginning and then decided as a business owner, that's just not my market. But there's a couple of people even who are we certify people to do what we do. And there are a couple of them there who they like to deal with hoarders and they're very good at it, but then they've added what we do on top of what that is.
Yeah. Yeah. And you made me think when you're talking, as far as the work that you do with them beforehand, I started thinking about the episodes where they would come in and you can tell they really hadn't done any work as far as their mindset, as far as work so that this thing wouldn't happen again. And they go back and, a week later, for whatever reason, I think one time there was like some storm. They went back a week later and all the stuff had been replaced. But I'm thinking in the background, I'm like, man, I wonder if that's because they hadn't actually done the psychological work before they started moving things out of the house.
Absolutely. So the first question, if someone reaches out to us, one of our consultants, and says, okay, I want you to get me organized. The first question is, what does that mean?
Mm.
Because organizing in and of itself has no value. It's simply a process, a system, a strategy to help you do what you want to do. So we need to know what it is that you want to do. That's why we call it, we're very strong, adamant about it. It's the art of organizing. And when somebody says to us, what should I do? So that's the wrong question. The question is, what will you do? So let's go back to the emotion part. Early on, I realized that when people had trouble letting go, if I ask enough questions, I would always find out that there was a severe emotional loss in their life at some point. I was autographing books at Barnes & Noble in New York City.
Fancy.
And I made that comment, and a young man, mid-20s, I would say, came up. And he said, I'm in a studio apartment here. He said, it's so full of stuff. I haven't had anybody in it for months. And he said, I come home from work at night. He said, it's mostly paper, magazines, notebooks, books. He said, I come home from work at night and say, okay, tonight is the night I'm going to clean this up. And he said, I start sorting on my bed because it's the only really empty flat space. And he said, I pick it up to make a decision. Remember, clutter is postponed decisions. He said, I literally feel paralyzed. And he said, there are nights when I shove the papers in bed and crawl in with my papers. And then he looked at me and he said, my mother died when I was 6. Are you telling me I have to deal with the grief of losing my mother before I can handle my paper? I said, I'm not a mental health professional, so I can't answer that question. But what I can tell you from my experience is if you find someone you trust, most likely not a family member, who can help you decide, go back to clutter is postponed decisions, help you decide what you need and what you want to keep, you will solve your problem. And based on my experience, it will affect every other decision. Well, I told that story. I was speaking to a group of 700 executive women at a university, and I told that story. And a woman walked up to me, literally with tears running down her face. And she said, you just saved my marriage. I said, wow, that's pretty dramatic. Do you mind elaborating? And she said, I came to this conference with the intention of telling my husband, to whom I've been married for 13 years, that I was leaving because he's a pack rat and I have allergies and the stuff is all over the place and I just couldn't manage it. And she said, but I never realized until I heard you talk that it wasn't that he wouldn't let go, but he couldn't let go. His mother died when he was 7.
Wow.
So I said, may I make a suggestion? She said, of course. I said, go home and say something to the effect of, I never understood before how important all this is to you. Let's explore how we can keep it and still live together. And I stayed in touch with them for 8 months. They didn't hire me, but I stayed in touch with them, and it changed the dynamics completely, because the more someone else tells you you don't need it, the more you hang on, because it addresses the emotions of fear. Fear I'm making a mistake, fear I'm going to offend someone, fear I'm going to be irresponsible, fear I'm going to forget. And so until you address those fears, you can't figure out how to answer it. So one of the questions we ask people is, what's the worst possible thing that would happen if you got rid of this? If you got rid of this and you're wrong, what is the price you're going to pay? And we call it the cost factor, which is you can keep everything you want if you're willing to pay the price. And the price is time, space, money, and energy. And it's not a moral issue. Two people are not going to decide the two things. That's the reason I'm still in it after all these years, because God did not create any two people or any two organizations the same. So every day is a new adventure.
Wow. When you say, and I like this phrase, clutter is postponed decisions. What kind of decisions typically are we talking about?
Well, the one decision is, so if I threw this away and I wanted it back again, is that a price I'm willing to pay? And some people would say yes. So in the early days, it's not true anymore, but in the early days, we would get bank statements, right? With them wrapped up in the statements in big, thick envelopes, and people would put them under the bed, and they were in the garage and wherever else. I'd always ask him, I say, what's the point of a bank statement? Well, it's to balance your checkbook. Most of those people had never balanced their checkbook, but they were keeping that because it had numbers on it and they were afraid the IRS would want it. So I said, okay, if you throw it away and you have to have it, what's the price you're going to pay? I have to call a bank. And back then they would say, oh, the bank might charge me $3 and I don't want to pay $3. Well, that's a choice. So which is more important, to keep boxes and boxes of paper so that you might have one check if you need it, or to risk getting rid of it, recycling it, shredding it, whatever's there, and knowing that if you had to do it. But Tony, in all the years I've done this with thousands of people, never has anybody ever come back and said, I'm sorry I did this. Now, I always warn people ahead of time. I promise you that you will get rid of something, give it away, donate it, whatever. And maybe a day from now, a week from now, a decade from now, you'll say, oh, I wish I had this. But you had to stop and think, what was the price you were paying for keeping it? So then we take people through the decision-making process. So let me give you an example. One of my clients was a speaker. She spoke on cruise ships. So she'd go all over the world and her office was full of travel bags from each of those trips with all the memorabilia and the notebooks and the brochures and all that kind of stuff. You could barely walk around in it. So we sat down to figure out what was really important. And we have what we call the art of wastebasketry. This is a series of questions that you can ask, because we don't tell you what to keep. I don't have the right to do that. It's your stuff. So one of the questions is, how difficult would this be to get again? So as she was going through the travel bags, it turned out almost everything in it could be gotten again easily, except the journals that she wrote when she was on the trip.
Wow.
So we ended up keeping one of the brochures that had the itinerary in it and their journals, and the rest of it we let go.
How did she feel about that?
Oh, she talked, and that was 35 years ago. If you talk to her today, she'd tell you about it because it was life-changing for her.
Yeah, I wouldn't never think that something that simple could help somebody so much like that, but it makes so much sense.
It is simple, very simple. I mean, that's the genius of it. It's simple, but it's not easy.
Yeah.
If it were easy, and here's one of the sad things that happens. If you go and search for Clutter is Postponed Decisions on the internet, you'll see that I'm quoted often. But unfortunately, often when I'm quoted, people add another word. They will say clutter is only postponed decisions, or merely postponed decisions, or simply postponed decisions. So if you're trying to get rid of your clutter and you're having trouble making decisions, and often in marriages, it's that. I mean, God has this sense of humor. In most marriages, you've got opposites. I'm married to somebody. When we first got married, I thought this is going to be the death of my career. And then I realized he wasn't my client. So, you're not trying to fix the world. But if someone says,
are you saying because y'all are so opposite, like where you're like really tidy and your partner is not?
Well, so let's get something. I really want to push back on this. Organized and tidy are two totally different things. So I've been diagnosed with ADHD. I'm a musician by training, a right-brained artist. I love to start things. I don't like to finish them. I love the big picture and I hate details. So the systems, and the reason I've stayed in business as long as I have and reinvented myself many times, is because it's for me. I mean, these systems were developed for artists and people like me that think that, a lot of times artistic people think, it would stifle my creativity. Artists are just naturally disorganized. That's not true. But there's lots of different ways. There's the art of organizing, which makes it fun. So it's not neat. So here's one of the tricks that I use. When I was a mother with young kids, I hated cleaning the house. So I would invite somebody over for dinner, because if I had somebody come for dinner, I had to clean the house, right? I do the same. I do it with taxes. If I need to get my taxes, I'll call the accountant and say, I'll have the stuff to you by then. And because I'm more accountable to the tax person than I am myself, I'll have it done. Well, in my house, in my office, Friday is the day everything has to be. So the old saying about a place for everything and everything in its place is garbage, because creativity is messy.
Mm.
It's half right, though. There has to be a place for everything. Clutter is not the problem. The problem is when you have the clutter and you don't know what to do with it. So in my house, Friday is the day everything has to be in its place, and it has to have taken me less than 30 minutes to get it there. So I told that story to one of my clients, and he said, he said, that's interesting. He said, my wife relegated me to the downstairs office in the basement without a window because she didn't like my clutter. And he said, I hate cleaning up clutter. But he said, if I were to do it every morning, I could do it in 5 minutes. And it's like Brian Tracy's book, Eat That Frog. So he said, it's like, I'll do that first. So his level of clutter that he will tolerate is 1 day and 5 minutes to clean it up. My level of clutter is 1 week and 30 minutes to clean it up. So part of what we help our clients deal with is this is where personality comes in. We have some people who want it clean at the end of every day. And I don't clean up my desk at the end of every day. Today's Wednesday and it's kind of messy right now. But I guarantee you by Friday afternoon, everything will be put away and put away in the right place, not stuffed away. In fact, I had one client years ago who was a museum and her husband died. And it was that circumstantial disorganization. Things got out of hand. And we got her house organized, which had her office in it. And she had a party and she put candles in the laundry room because she wanted everybody to come in and see that she hadn't stuffed the clutter in the laundry room.
Oh, wow. What do you do in those cases?
What do you mean? I'm not sure what the question is.
You said she had the clutter, she had it stuffed in the laundry room?
Oh, she didn't. I mean, the reason that's what she'd always done in the past. So in the past, when she would have a party, she'd go around, clean the clutter up and put it in the laundry room and close the door. After we organized it, she was so excited that she had a place for everything that she left the laundry room door open and put candles in it so everybody could see that she hadn't stuffed the clutter.
Oh my God. I bet you when you have clients that you take from that point to where they're stuffing stuff and you take them to the point to where, like what you just said with the candles and they're happy, what typically happens inside of them?
Well, one of my favorite quotes from a client that I worked with for about 6 months virtually. I've never met her, but we did all our work virtually. And at the end of the time, she said, I'm so happy. If God were to put a man in my life, there's actually enough room in my house for him now. It's my highest compliment. I was like, okay, that's the best compliment you can get.
Can you make a video for me for that one for a testimony? I'm curious, how does postponed decision making show up differently as paper clutter, digital clutter, or mental clutter?
It doesn't show up differently at all. So this again is the simple part of it. So it started when I started organizing houses. I quickly found that paper was the most difficult. It's what people left till the last. It's what they stuffed in garages and under the bed. I remember I worked with an astrophysicist in Washington, D.C., and we were in the garage pulling out the boxes, and he was laughing. And I remember him looking at me and he said, if anybody ever told me, I'd be laughing cleaning out the garage. But he had a system and he felt light about doing it. And so helping them to make those decisions is really an important part of this. It's giving them a way to decide. So when I was doing the paper, people would give me a pile of papers this high and they say, okay, I'm the chair of the condo association board and I have to keep all this because there might be a lawsuit or whatever. Well, you couldn't manage a pile of papers this high. It's not doing. And then it occurred to me that there were really 3 decisions you could make about any piece of paper. Reference or toss. That's where art comes from. Action means this piece of paper or this digital document or this item, it applies across the board. It requires an action, something I have to do or delegate. The ball is in my court. Reference simply means, or storage, doesn't matter whether it's physical stuff in the garage or whether it's wine in the wine cellar or wherever it is. Reference simply means I don't have the guts to throw it away. So it's reference. I'm going to keep it in case I want it. And toss is the last. Toss, recycle, donate. Tony, you can go to anything you are trying to organize And it will be in every item that you touch is one of those three things.
Just like that.
Just like that. That's the initial. Now, so ACT is one. Okay, so let's say you got a pile of paper. So we have a class called Sort of Success where people actually do the work on the class. It's virtual. So we're teaching them, but then they're actually with their piles of paper. And the first thing they do is they have a pile of papers in front of them, and they do that initial sort, what we call initial sort, into action, reference, or toss. For most people, the majority is toss. Because when they're really ask themselves the question about what's the worst thing that would happen if I didn't have this, or another one is, does this help me accomplish my work or enjoy my life? If it doesn't, it's clutter and you can't afford it. So that's often. Then the next smallest pile is reference. It's just the stuff you're going to keep. I don't know if maybe I have to keep it because it's taxes or whatever, or it's just like, I don't know, I might need it someday. But the smallest pile is action. Well, even that pile is pretty big, so you can't put it together. So then the next thing is then to break the action down. And we actually have something called a SOAR board where we help people do that. But that initial decision-making is critical. It's true in your closet. I mean, you can do it it's true in your kitchen, in the junk drawer in the kitchen or anything like that. You can apply it everywhere.
Yeah, that's incredible. I would imagine the group that you just described, I would imagine that that would be an incredible experience to not feel alone and to have other people there doing it with you. How often do you have these?
Tony, you just used a word that's really critical. We found in doing this that there are three components. I grew up on a farm in Nebraska, and I think about the three-legged milk stool because it's like this. The first thing you have to have is a system. You cannot clear clutter randomly. That's shuffling. So you have to have a system. We have a proven system that's been used now for almost 3 decades. I have people that I worked with 8 hours. We used to call it an 8-hour miracle. I have people over 20 years ago spent 8 hours, and today they're still using what they learned in that 8 hours. So you need a system. Secondly, you need accountability. Because if organizing were easy, you wouldn't have a problem. But we're all more willing to be accountable to somebody else than we are ourselves. So if you know that we do twice a week, we get together. So they know that twice a week, they're going to come in this group and they're going to do it. And they don't want to go to the group and say, oh, I didn't come today, sort of thing. But the third thing, the one that really made this program sing, was community. Because there is so much shame around clutter. When people say clutter is simply postponed decisions, and then you're having trouble doing it, you feel shame. Or when you've inherited, one of the big things in our society now is inheriting things and wanting to be responsible for them, but not knowing how to decide. There's lots of pain and things like that. But when you're in this group and you have a system, you have accountability, and you have community, what people are able to accomplish is phenomenal.
Yeah, you mentioned the inheriting part. I remember many years ago, my wife's mom, she would try to bring us stuff that she had from her mom and her mom's mom and probably her mom's mom. And I would always be like, nope, we don't want that stuff, but leave it where it's at. And now my sister-in-law inherited it. And now she's having, from what I understand, is she's having a hard time with giving it away. So, and I know that she's not the only person. What advice would you give to her if she was listening to this? Because I'm sure a lot of people are going through the same thing with that.
It's a cultural problem now, because in my generation, that was our legacy. We kept the china and the silver and the crystal as the legacy we're leaving our children and grandchildren. And when our children and grandchildren don't want it, it brings up an emotional issue of, what does that say about my life? Does that say that my life and what I cared about wasn't important? So what do you do about it? Well, the biggest thing is, in Proverbs, it says, without a vision, the people perish. So the question is, what is the vision of what you will do when you don't have that? So I spoke to a group of a society, and a woman came up to me and she said, can I hire you to help me? And I said, well, what do you need? Well, it turned out she is an incredible artist. I mean, extraordinary artist. She's not doing any art at all now because several members of her family have died and have left her their stuff. She has a big, beautiful house, and she's feeling the weight and the responsibility of all of this historical stuff and wanting to be responsible and wanting to be respectful. And so it has literally paralyzed her. So then part of my work and the majority of part of what I do with this, and the reason it says Vision Accelerator there, is because God has given me the ability to see a vision for other people that they can't see for themselves. And so my job is to facilitate what would their life be like without this. And in her case, we sat and talked about if she were to paint, what would she be doing? I mean, that's what God gave her, an extraordinary talent. And think about it. Would your predecessors want you to put your life on hold for them? That's ridiculous. And besides that, this world's not my home anyway.
Right. Right. It's temporary.
Temporary.
Yeah.
So the question is, and people say to me, well, why do you keep doing this? I said, because I want to give other people hope. And in fact, I had a business coach. You'll appreciate this as a coach. I had a business coach who asked me, why do you do what you do? And I said, because I want to give other people hope. And I said, that's what I want on my tombstone. On my tombstone, I have to say, she gave others hope. And she said, no, that's not your why. That's your what. What are you talking about? And we dug through it. Well, it turned out the reason that I want to give other people hope is I spent the majority of my life feeling hopeless. I tried to commit suicide at age 11, and I was in a mental hospital at 40. So we, as you pointed out earlier, we often teach, you bring on guests because you want to learn what they have because you learn from them. And it's the same for me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you. Thank you for sharing that and being so vulnerable with that. I know a lot of our listeners, they're going through some hard times. We have people that are listening right now, what is something that you can give them so that they can gravitate towards hope if they're in the same situation that you were in when you were 11 and when you were 40?
So it's a 14-minute training called Less Clutter, More Life. We have a link for you, lesscluttermorelife.com/leaders lead. It's a 14-minute training that teaches you how to make decisions about paper. And if you learn the decision making, then you can apply that to your closet, your kitchen, your garage, your attic, your storage, wherever. And then that leads into a workshop, a 90-minute workshop that talks more about how the training video is the first sort, the action, reference, and toss. But then the video, the training session actually goes into helping you do it. So that's a way for you to get introduced. And you can always go to my website, barbarahemphill.com. And then on YouTube, there's lots of videos that have things that give people encouragement. And I really hope that people will be encouraged, because it's never, as long as you have breath, it's never too late to solve the problem.
So what does it look like to work with you? Are you still doing virtual trainings, or is it in person?
I do. Well, I do both. I mean, sometimes people want me to come and they'll fly out and I'll come and stay. Some people like go and stay in their house for 2 or 3 days and we'll talk about it. I don't do a lot as it relates to like getting rid of physical things, but we do offices. Most of our work is done virtually now. There's a big advantage to that because it doesn't involve the shame. A lot of people don't want to, they're successful people. And in fact, one of my very first clients became an ambassador for the United States. And she had me work from 6 p.m. to midnight because she was so ashamed about hiring a professional. I'm so disorganized, I had to hire a professional. And if anybody came in, she would introduce me as a friend. So there's a lot of shame around it. So every system is different. So I do a 30-minute complimentary discovery session with anybody to point them in the right direction. Because it's not a one size fits all. Different people need different things. Like, are you a self-starter? Like some people, if I give you homework, in fact, one of my favorite services is called Vision Accelerator Laser Coaching. And so we do a 90-minute call. And in the 90-minute call, we figure out one result they want in 90 days. one result, one problem related to productivity and organizing they're trying to solve. And so we put together a plan. We have a 5-step, we put together a plan. And then for the 90 days, they have unlimited tech support 24/7.
Ooh, I like
But
that.
the trick is every time they text me something, they get an answer back from me, but it has homework. And they can't get the next text until they do that homework or give me a good solid reason why they're not doing it. So one of my favorite stories is there was a woman, and one of the questions I ask, and I think every person should ask this question: if I left this earth tonight, what regret would I have?
Mm.
The answer to that question, Tony, is a form of clutter, because I define clutter as anything that prevents you from accomplishing your work and enjoying your life. So this woman, we did this call and she said, I think she'd written 140 songs. She composed 140 songs. And she said, my children and my grandchildren want them documented in a chord book, and I haven't done it yet. And at that point, she was traveling different places, so she wasn't always in the same place. So we did this 90-minute laser coaching. For Christmas, her children and grandchildren got her chord book with her 140 songs.
Oh, that's so beautiful. That is amazing. You're doing some really, really good work, and I want to thank you. I mean, I know we're not done yet, but I can tell that you are making a difference in these folks' lives, and thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome. It is such a joy. I just launched a new organization here in my area called the Triangle Christian Chamber of Commerce. And I was there, and there was a woman that I had heard me speak 17 years ago at an event. And she said, I followed you. And she talked about the different things she did. And of course, I had no idea. And that just brings me great joy, because God has enabled me to touch people's lives in ways that I have no idea. And I just keep doing what I'm doing.
Oh yeah, that is so beautiful. For the folks that might not be ready to take the step and to get a coach or to join the program, I know that you have an amazing book. Would you mind telling us about that book?
Well, there are several books actually, but there's one. It depends on the kind of book you want. So, and they're all on Amazon. There's several books on Amazon. There's one called Less Clutter, More Life. And that's a kind of a coffee table book. It's small, but it has beautiful photographs in it done by my friend Louise Wanier. And the premise is that physical and digital clutter is a symptom of emotional and spiritual clutter. So it's really it's a quick read. You can read it easily in an hour, but it's something that you need to think about, getting the mindset right about what that is. And then there's one called Love It or Lose It, Living Clutter Free Forever, which is a fun read because it's just stories. It's story after story of people who had clutter in various areas, different ages, families, young people, old business. And it's just stories about how people solved their problem with it. And then there's one that I wrote called Walking with Barbara, 30 Emails from God.
Ooh.
And that one was, I took a writing course from one of my coaches, Perry Marshall, who challenged us to write an email a day for 30 days without planning it ahead of time. And so I took the challenge and I wrote, and I got to people on my group, and I just said, I'm going to write this. I don't know what it's going to be. It might be personal. It might be professional. It might be ranting. I don't know. You want to join me? So they joined me for the ride. And on day 29, I was horseback riding. I fell and I broke my collarbone.
Ooh.
And so I didn't get it finished, but I had wanted to have that done for my 70th birthday. And my team got together and took those 29 and added the one and made it 30 things and published it as a book, which I use as a fundraiser for a project I started in India called Shepherd's House Ministry. So if people want to donate to the ministry, then they get a copy of the book. So there's different books for different things.
That's awesome. So if y'all are listening to this and you need some support, make sure you contact Barbara. You go to our website. If you can say your website again one more time.
Barbara Hemphill.
Awesome. And if you could give us one more word for someone, and then we'll close right after this, for someone that is stuck in making the decision to get rid of the clutter, their life.
Ask the question, what is the one thing that has to happen in my life in the next 90 days for me to feel happy with my progress? And the reason that question is critical is because 90 days is a time you really can make a difference. And whenever that one thing is, if you do it and you're successful, then it's critical that you celebrate your success.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Barbara.
You're very welcome.
Whew, that was great. If you enjoyed this podcast, well, I'm sure you enjoyed it. If you're still here with us, what I want you to do is head over to your favorite podcast and streaming network and give us a download, subscribe to the channel, and also let us know what you think about the show. And from the bottom of my heart, I want to say thank you for the things that you've done. Thank you for the things that you're doing. And especially thank you for the things that you're going to do, because I know that you're going to do something amazing.